Finally then, it's felt like this bike has been in the wild for absolutely ages, being used by pro teams and pro triathletes. The all-new Trinity Advanced SL, aka the giant Trinity with disc brakes, has now been released. Now, I'm expecting there to be a live version, so a women's version of this as well, but on the website they've only released a frame set as yet, so I'm going to be focusing on the giant version so we can look through all the specs and so on, but I'd expect that to follow. Right, I want to learn more. Let's go. Tell me more about it. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to tell you my reactions and thoughts, and this isn't sponsored in any way by Giant, so I'll tell you what I think's good and what I think isn't so good, and we'll have a look at all I've got in front of me, but feel free to let me know your thoughts and comments down below, especially if you've got one or bought one or going to get one, because I'd love to have a go on one. Please make it a size large. Thank you. Right, so this is all the Giant stuff about saying how they developed it and so on, and talking about triathlon. Great, good to see that triathlon is at the center of them designing it. Further down, a couple of pictures, very nice. TT frame set only. The fork looks a bit different on that, doesn't it? Almost looks like the old one, that. Whereas that one looks very, very different. Let's get stuck in. There's Gustav. He looks great. Well done. Right, full speed dynamics. Great, sounds awesome. Take my money. Again, they're talking a bit about how they developed it and so on, and I sort of believe that, having seen it out, used by Gustav, used by Jaco Alula. You've seen them out there and them testing it. I'm sure they've changed it, but let's see how and what they're saying they've done. So the improvements start with disc brakes. I mean, obviously all bikes have gone to disc brakes now, haven't they? Really, we know the benefits of them. We know it's the future and so on. Whether you like it or not, that is going to be the future of bike technology. And then they've also hidden the brake caliper from the wind. Great. So what is special about the giant Trinity SL? Well, I'm really interested to see here. They've actually talked about compliance. This is paragraph 2, and they're talking about the fact that the armrest features 28% more compliance, and the seat post offers 100% greater compliance. Now, I don't know how that is calculated or what that actually means. Giant have done a really good job later on in this in talking about how, transparently, where the numbers have come from, but that doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, other than, yes, I need it to be more comfortable, because the more comfy a time trial bike is, the better you're going to perform. Another big thing here, I'm loving seeing this so early on as well, food storage. Yeah, you're going to need to take some gels, you're going to need to take some food. The fact that this is bigger and it's been thought through, and you can now carry, obviously it depends what brand you're taking, but 6 gels, awesome. And I can also see an integrated hydration unit, which sits on the down tube. So you've got food storage and you've got fluid storage. However, I can't see any tool storage. Let's see if we can see any later on. That's the time trial version, so that won't have any. Very good, wish I was that aero. How did we make it faster? Yep, tell me. That is a mannequin. Let's have a look. Right. When it comes to, it's important, okay? So, integrated aerodynamics. Now, this is the bit that I don't really like. I like integrated aerodynamics, I like it being faster, but I don't like this. So they've made it faster by using truncated ellipse tubing in strategic areas. I mean, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I just don't understand that. Tell it me in the language that I understand. Tell me that it's shaped differently to make the airflow faster. Something I don't know, but it doesn't sway me one way or another. So I don't think that's really of any use to me. They use computation fluid dynamics. Again, I sort of know what that is just through just watching a lot of YouTube videos, basically, in that's just how I interpret it as a virtual wind tunnel. So you put it in a software, you're not having to be in a wind tunnel, and it's telling you how fast or slow it's going to be. So they're basically saying, look, we've done a lot of research on this, and then it's been wind tunnel tested in Germany. Okay, cool. Now, this is really interesting, and I really like the transparency of this, but I am slightly disappointed with the output. So they're saying here, we've tested the new one against the previous one, and they've also told you what the wheels were different. So the old one has been using the Cadex 65 wheel system, and the new one has been using the Cadex 4-spoke disc system. Okay, cool. And then both models had all triathlon accessories installed. This is brilliant. You often see brands saying, oh, this new one that we're trying to sell you is 10 watts faster than the old one. But then they don't tell you how they've calculated that. They're just like, wink, wink, it's definitely 10 watts faster. Now, they haven't broken down what runs they've done in terms of, okay, was it 15, 10, 5, 0, and 20, or was it 20, 10, and 0? But I think you can't, be like 5 paragraphs long, wouldn't it? And they've also tested it at 45 kilometers an hour. I would have liked to have seen that at 35 or 40, just because of the average speeds that the average or the amateur triathlete is going to be riding at. 45 is a bit quick. That is more like pro speed. I guess, they're making these bikes for the pro athletes and amateurs buy them, rather than making them for amateurs and pros ride them. I don't really know, but yeah, I think that's a bit quick, but maybe the differences are so small. And that is essentially I'm going to say disappointment. I'm not going to sniff at being 5.9 watts faster, but that isn't, in my opinion, massive. Especially if you're taking into account you've got a newer wheel system. So you've got a 4-spoke instead of the 65s, and you've got a new frame set, and the total saving is 5.9 watts. I would half expect to see that from wheels alone, but I think the reason for this is the old bike, the outgoing rim brake bike, was known to be super fast. People in the time trialing world absolutely loved it. So I think they're starting from such a good place already that it's difficult to make an improvement on. And they do talk later on about the fact that a lot of that improvement, or a significant portion, has come from the hydration, or the accessories, as they say. So I will come back to that in a little while, but yeah, that's interesting. So 5.9 watts, but at least to tell you how. And in that spirit, they then told you it's lighter. So it's 558 grams lighter, but they've actually broken down where it's lighter and where it's heavier. I think that's brilliant. Again, brands will say, oh, they'll either say the frame set is 200 grams lighter, or they'll say the whole thing is lighter, but then they won't tell you, oh, but we put a SRAM Red on instead of a SRAM Force, or whatever. Giant have actually broken it down. So you can see here, a lot of the weight saving comes from the frame, the fork, and the seat post. And then further down, the hydration unit is a lot lighter. The old one had a hydration unit in between the bars, which probably had a lot more bolts and things to hold it on. Whereas this one's got one on the down tube, so likely just bolts onto bottle cage mounts. So yeah, really like that. I think that's really good, really transparent. I mean, 558 grams lighter. It's like, yeah, it's not going to make you win. Well, it might make you win or lose a race if you're at the pointy end, but for me, it wouldn't. But if you translate that into, okay, I can carry another bottle and not be any worse off than the old one, that's cool. I think that's good. So the fact they've had some sort of focus on weight, I like. Time trial triathlon bikes have over the last few years just got heavier and heavier. It doesn't matter all the time, but it does a bit. Okay, stiffness. Now this again is interesting, because what they're basically saying is the new one is the same as the old one, but it's more efficient because it's lighter. So the new frame set's got the same lateral fork stiffness, the same frame pedaling stiffness, and the same transmission stiffness, but because it's lighter, the calculation that they use to do it, to work it out, means that it's 12.6% better. That's good. They could have left that out. They actually explained why it is. And I guess, I'm sure if they're able to make it stiffer, or if they needed to make it stiffer, they would have done. So all that says to me is that that's likely the optimal stiffness in those areas. Based on their testing and feedback, that's got to be where they want it. You could make it, I'm sure they could make it stiffer in any area if they wanted to, but that's good to see that they haven't done it just for the sake of saying, oh, this bike is stiffer in this area. Like, they've actually just stuck to what they think is best, and then explain that there's a percentage improvement because of the calculation. Okay, so we've seen how it makes it faster. So this is the words I don't understand. The modified truncated ellipse shaping on the head tube, down tube, fork, and seat post. So the fork, I mean, is that just because it bows out a bit, basically? It looks cool, so yeah, sold, take my money. And with the addition of disc brakes, the frame and fork have a specific new tubing shape to integrate the front and rear calipers in a way that minimises drag. So you can see there the calipers just tucked away behind the fork. Yeah, cool, like it. This is interesting. One of the most impactful changes of the previous generation. Now that, I think, is Giant saying this makes a big difference, which again draws me back to the 5.9 watts. How much of that comes from this? They're saying this is one of the most impact. Does that mean that's 2 watts, 4 watts, 5 watts? Like, I don't know, but I think it's interesting that they point that out. So on the large one, you get an 850ml, and on the medium one, and on the small one, you get a 700ml. It's an integrated bottle, sits on the down tube. A straw comes out through the frame and out the headset and up to the cockpit there. Brilliant. I love that. I was concerned that you couldn't fill it up on the fly. I've seen later on in this article that you can. That's cool. It is a little awkward it being down there, but it's no more awkward than putting a bottle in a bottle cage. And how it works in triathlon, you tend to pick up a bottle from an aid station, fill up your hydration, and then you're going to be out of the feed zone, so you're going to need to carry that empty bottle with you. So as long as you put a bottle cage on your bike somewhere to be able to then offload that at the next aid station, then that would be absolutely fine. Looks pretty cool and pretty slick. This, I think, is brilliant. Now, I do hear that Matt Botterill, the time trialer and bike fitter, has been involved in the development of this bike. I don't know to what extent, but I do know that he's worked on a lot of these, has ridden on a lot of these on the previous generation. So this, is absolutely music to my ears. The biggest challenge that I've personally found when I'm buying a time trial triathlon bike is getting the damn thing to fit me. Whether it's reach, whether it's stack height, you can make it happen, but you've got to buy the expensive stuff. You have to buy the expensive spacers, buy the expensive angle adjusters, get different extensions. It's just a massive pain and financial outlay. This looks brilliant. I will reserve judgment until I actually see it working, but the fact there's so many different options and angled spacers in the pack that you're going to get with the bike, I'd hope, that says to me you can get in the position you want, providing you buy the right size bike, out of the box, and that is awesome, because I think a lot of people struggle with getting fitted. You can see there are lots of different extension options. Awesome. I do think those extensions as well look pretty cool. Hugging the arm is supposed to be fast, and those look like the same shape as like the Wattshot Minimoy ones, which is pretty interesting. So yeah. This next bit is basically can it fit me? Now this looks complicated, and you might think, oh, I don't know how to understand that. Essentially, if you take your measurements, it says somewhere up there, if you look at your charts, now this is versus the previous one, like where the measurements are. But if you take all this information to a bike fitter, they'll make head or tail of it, and they'll tell you if it'll fit you or not. If it fits you, let's have a look at which one you're going to buy. So they sell a frame set on its own. This is, let's see where we're located. I'm in the UK. So you got the time trial frame set and the triathlon frame set. The time trial's on the left and the triathlon one is on the right. Key differences, I mean, the fork look the same. It all looks the same other than the top tube storage and the down tube bottle. Maybe there are slight differences, but yeah, who knows. £3,750. I mean, it's not super low, but if you look at bikes like the Argon E119 Tri Plus, they're $5,500 for a frame set. And I sort of think they don't want you to buy a frame set, they want you to buy the full bike, surely. So let's have a look at the full bike. I've not very often seen it more worthwhile you buying like a frame and building it up, unless you've got loads of parts lying around. It's often like economies of scale, you better buying the whole package. Now the only one they've got listed at the minute is the Advanced SL0, which is their top of the range one. I have come across, and I'll put this on screen, like a spreadsheet of other models and what their prices are. Whether this is 100% accurate or not, I don't know. I just came across it on a Facebook page, so don't hold me to it. But there's different levels. The entry level looks like it's £6,500. I really hope that's got DI, well, we'll have Di2 or ETAP, and I hope it's got these 4-spoke wheels. If they're gonna, get behind them and say these are the fastest wheels, I hope it's got them. If it's got some lower spec wheels, I don't think that's quite as good value. But when you compare it to, I only come back to Argon because it's at the top of my mind. The E117, the new one, is £5,500 with Di2 and midsection carbon wheels. So they're going to need to put something on that nice. So £10,500. What do you think about that? I think that's quite a lot of money, but I think the question of is it good value or not, I don't really know. What I would have loved to have seen on this bike, which is missing, is tool storage. You've designed a bike from the ground up. You've stated you've made it for triathlon and time trial and so on, but I can't put an inner tube anywhere. I can't put a multi-tool anywhere. I can't put a CO2 anywhere. I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm going to have to get a saddlebag or a behind the saddles storage 3D printed or something. And that's all fine. And triathletes and time trialists like doing that sort of stuff, but not everybody. And I just think for something that you're saying is like, oh, and I'll stand corrected if you can actually get tools in that hydration unit, but it doesn't say that anywhere. I think there should have been tool storage on this bike. I think that's a big omission, and I think that should have been included, because like if I'm buying one of those now, that's the first thing I'm thinking about. Oh, I've got this bike, cool, but I need to sort out where to put my spares, because if I go and pay £600 to do a triathlon and I puncture, I need to have the spares to be able to get me to the finish. If I'm a pro, I can put my arm up and get a new wheel, but in the age group field, especially where I am, you're quite a way back, I'm going to need to fix it myself, and it just doesn't have that. So not an absolute deal breaker, but it's just I would have liked to have seen, if you compare it to other top tier triathlon bikes, they do have that. What you often see is that it's different for Giant because they're keeping the frame the same, but the top tier bikes have a different frame set. So the Argon, obviously E117 to E119, is more integrated, has more storage. So maybe the Giant should have looked at that. But I do think that's good that the lower tier bikes are still getting the same frame. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know if you'll be buying one. If you are buying one, can you make sure it's a large so I can come and have a ride on it, please? Am I buying one? Probably not. I've got a couple of bikes coming out my ears at the minute already, and I'm very much in the second-hand market as opposed to the new market. But I'd love to have a go on one of these. So yeah, let me know what you think.